can say this message, which is the British troopers are only here to kill us and oppress us. And then you keep goading and goading and making the situation more and more volatile until something happens. There's a pushback. And then you can use that pushback, those 13 innocent or 13 unarmed people killed, as the example. Look, we said they were only here to kill us. And look, they've gone and done it.
You can see it happening in the States at the minute.
I was going to say, and you can see the exact same.
You can see. You know, why do people go to war? Very few wars are won outright. Very few wars are wars of attrition, where eventually one side is defeated. Doesn't really happen. Happened in the Second World War. Total defeat for Germany. But that was because it was a policy of the Allies to totally defeat Nazism, get rid of it. But most people go to war, and civil wars and what have you, to get a place at the table after the war. And that's, you know, so we were not allowed a place at the table before this war started, but we will certainly earn a place at the table whenever it's over.
Now that is a very interesting point, actually, because again, I look at the protests in America that started off as it being the Black Lives Matter protests, and very quickly we saw were subverted by different groups. And you now have the autonomous state of Chaz set up in Seattle, if you've come across that. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if you think of the protests in that case being like a war, suddenly a battle, how many groups were going into that going, so there's going to be some shifting of this here.
Yeah,
I want to get onto that map, and I think this is the crux of why it's become a controversial issue. I've seen people saying, you know, all we're doing is saying racism is bad. Why is this a controversial issue? Well, it's not necessarily only that message that is being said within it. There is also the groups such as, I think Antifa is involved in there, that basically want no government rule. There are groups in there that say Republicans shouldn't exist. There are groups in there that say there should be no police force. There are all these different things. And, you know, whilst I can agree with one message, I don't necessarily agree with all of the messages being espoused in that. But if nobody is able to criticize any part of it, then we just allow this sort of steamroller to take place. And without actually screwing our heads on and pulling ourselves out of the emotion and going, okay, there's these protests going on. What else is going on here? Who else wants a seat at the table at the end of this?
Well, every protest group that I can think of over the years any major protest group has been hijacked in the end by people who jump on the bandwagon. The civil rights movement in Northern Ireland was hijacked by the IRA. They saw an opportunity to become the defenders of Catholic people. That's, you know, and that was allowed to happen by the very fact that the police at the time was overwhelmingly Protestant, and they were then seen as the enemy. So we'll protect you from the police. Yeah, okay, that's great. And the whole movement, the whole civil rights movement, was then hijacked by the IRA, who saw an opportunity, helped by the abysmal political decisions and military decisions taken at the time. I was in the Royal Ulster Constabulary in 1970. I know it's a long time ago. I went into it to change things. I was never I was never on one side or the other. But there was a big sort of drive to recruit people who were more middle of the road and they were trying to recruit more Roman Catholics to balance the situation. I joined. Within a very short time, within a couple of months of me joining, all hell broke loose in terms of really a civil war started.
Right.
And the problem is that looking back in it, there were so many politicians who used the situation to divide and rule. Every time something like that happens, people come out of the woodwork, and not only will people hijack movements, but politicians will jump on board as well and make the whole situation worse. I mean, some of the decisions that were taken, I'll give you a classic example, Bloody Sunday. lots of Roman Catholic people did not, the vast majority did not support the IRA. They didn't support the violent struggle, it's called. They didn't support it at all until Bloody Sunday. They then saw British paratroopers shooting dead 13 unarmed people. Yes, there were in the background some gunmen who had shot him, but you know, the people who were killed were unarmed civilians. Your local population saw that happening, and then the politicians come out of the woodwork, or the political leaders come out of the woodwork and say, yeah, see, we told you, you know, they're only here to kill us. So we'll protect you. The IRA will protect you. And it became the biggest recruiting drive that the IRA had within the space of months, from having, you know, a couple of, maybe less than 100 active volunteers. There were hundreds driven into the IRA by the mishandling of Bloody Sunday.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I could sort of, I can see the clever movement from the IRA there, which is, you know, you can say this message, which is, you know, the British troopers are only here to kill us and oppress us. And then you keep goading and goading and making the situation more and more volatile until something happens, there's a pushback. And then you can use that pushback, those 13 innocent or 13 unarmed people killed, as the example. Look, we said they were only here to kill us, and look, they've gone and done it.
You can see it happening in the States at the minute.
I was going to say, and you can see the exact same.
You can see. I am absolutely, as an